speak about today. Welcome, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having us. And so just quick history. I work with VanEck, and VanEck is one of the largest private exchange trade fund manager firm. Firm was built in 1955, and we really built the first gold equity fund in the United States before gold investing was legal here. And it's a very similar situation to what Bitcoin investing looks like 50 years later. We, as you see in our timeline, we kind of created many interesting funds in the U.S., including this first gold equity fund, pioneered emerging market investing, and have sort of other non-conventional strategies out in the market. So VanEck is today manages roughly $56 billion, and we have offices in New York, where our headquarters is, Tampa, Zurich, Switzerland, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and Shanghai in China, Sydney, Australia, and a bunch of other locations. I work on digital assets with VanEck, and my background is, as you guys may know, is in digital assets. I was one of the sort of like early miners in the space, and so loved the space, and ended up working in it. I wanted you to know first the technology basis for digital assets. There are three trends that have provided the technology basis in the past 30 years that enabled the creation of digital assets. One of it is the evolution and the drastically lower cost of cloud computing and web services. The other is social media networks and what they enabled in bootstrapping networks. And then the third component of it is the growth of operator-led micro VCs that invested in early companies. Those three trends actually ended up accelerating a lot of the technological processes that led to the creation of many of the digital asset businesses and digital assets themselves. Public key cryptography, if you guys probably know something about it, is one of the key components of how the internet works today. It's pretty much basically you have two boxes. When you send an email, then you transfer what's called a public key. So on the internet, so everyone can see it, and there's a private key that you give to the other party has that can unlock the messages. This is the basis for the internet and how sort of digital assets work today. As public key cryptography became used in email and all form of sort of web communication, there's a network that Jacob is probably old enough to know about, and some of you guys might be too young to remember this, but this was called the torrent network, which the idea was, and growing up in Central Eastern Europe, this was crucial for us. So a peer-to-peer file sharing application by which what you could do if you had a game, a movie, or any content, you could share with any number of peers. So you cut up the 100 megabyte pieces to 100 pieces, and you broadcast those packages to each other, and then everyone else who received that package also broadcasted it. So this was revolutionary. This was content sharing in a way that has never happened before. So there are the film industry hated this because it created this big budget film, and then people around the world just started peer-to-peer sharing it, and it was unstoppable. So they basically you create infinite copies of these new movies, and a lot of people didn't pay for it, right? So, and then these were shared. So then this network became just like a big regulatory issue, but also a huge technological innovation that led to the creation of many digital currencies. So when you share a game or a movie or some random image or an email on the internet, effectively what you do is send a copy of it. That is okay in many scenarios, except when you send money. So if I send $100 to Jacob, then so I should not have the $100, and Jacob should have the $100. I can't send a copy of that $100 bill to Jacob just as is. So what Satoshi Nakamoto, who's credited to be the founder of Bitcoin, figured out is a system by which you can send money over the internet without sending an actual duplicate. And the way in which he solved this problem is pretty much the following. You broadcast a transaction, and you let everyone see that transaction. And if everyone sees the transaction, then you cannot cheat. So that was the secret how this problem was solved in the internet. So while in the torrent network we send copies, and when we are sending emails, we send copies of what exists on our local computer, you now are able to send money without having duplicate entries. And this is all done permission-free, so no government or financial corporation can stop you from sending money. There's 100,000 computers running today on the internet with a full copy of the Bitcoin blockchain, and they manage these transactions without having a central intermediary like a bank, a central bank, or a financial corporation. So that was a big thing, and I will talk about this for a few more minutes, and then we can have a discussion. That was a big thing in 07 and 08 when people realized that, oh, well, banks and financial institutions might not be as foolproof as we thought. So Bitcoin was actually launched in 2009, just right after the financial crisis. And that's where the thing that you should remember is that this is a peer-to-peer distributed ledgers, which is the parent category for things like Bitcoin. They're not government or company-controlled peer-to-peer databases. Well, truth is pretty much very quick or instantaneous, and you can track all kinds of things on these ledgers. And in fact, before Bitcoin existed, I don't know if you guys ever played World of Warcraft, but people are sort of started creating tokens in that space. And so, again, Bitcoin was novel in the sense that it was just, not central issued, not issued by a company like World of Warcraft Gold, which was issued by a company. It was not issued like the dollar, which was issued by the U.S. government. And it was not issued like the Second Life dollar, which was also issued by the company. So as you look at digital assets, the attributes are usually in this four quadrant. You can see, either convertible, non-convertible, physical, and virtual. And Bitcoin ends up being this convertible currency, fungible currency. That means that you can exchange any piece to any other, and it ends up being virtual. So super quickly, when you talk about digital assets, there are three types of digital assets. And, you guys, these are the three things that you should remember. The three types are cryptocurrencies, platforms, and applications. Cryptocurrencies are sort of like digital gold or meant to be some sort of store of value. And just know that not all cryptocurrencies are effective stores of value today. And there are platforms which are pretty much base layer applications that enable other applications to run on them. You can think about that as Ethereum, or a centralized version that is similar, like the iOS store, or the HTTPS or HTTP protocol. And these are sort of protocol level. These are platforms that enable other things to run on them. And there are specific applications that are sort of also enable tracking of ownership of specific resources like internet traffic and other other type of things. And in a sort of like a smarter world, we can see how this could be useful. So those are the three main categories. And obviously, there are a lot of different applications and classifications. So obviously, Bitcoin is, if you want to look through it, it's a cryptocurrency. Ethereum is a platform, and then you can one of the specific use case or application could be a media platform or like a blockchain software-oriented platform. So those are some of the basics. And again, before we go into, there's a ton of risks to digital assets today. And early in the space, there's tons of unintentional coding errors, the novel environments, volatile space, and so on. So I have a ton more, sort of like, we don't have to go through these all, but I have a ton more slides on, for instance, the monetary theory behind Bitcoin and so on. But I think the important stuff is really that today there's a lot of new companies that are actually I will update this number, but there's a lot of companies that would be S&P Fortune 500 companies in the private space and the crypto space. So there's now tens of companies that are worth like multiple billions of dollars. They make a ton of money, sometimes make more money than banks. And the space is getting institutionalized very rapidly. So I don't need to go through all this, and maybe Jacob and I can just talk to some of it, but lots of good developments in the space. Eventually, I think the big idea behind this all is that a lot of assets will be represented by digital tokens. So, your real estate that you may be buying, sports-related stuff, things from your everyday life will be represented by tokens. And it is, in my view, tokens are the next evolution after exchange-traded funds. So, peer-to-peer networks that enable people to sort of exchange values. I think what's the future of this space, and I think there is roughly $10 trillion of value created in the next 20 years in this space. So that's why we are interested. The ETF space runs from 0 to 6 trillion in roughly 20 years, and I believe this space is actually bigger than ETFs. So very excited about that and happy to talk about it with Jacob. And obviously Jacob has great views and insights into the space as well.
Thank you, Gabor. That was phenomenal. In fact, I think you did an entire semester's worth of information in 15 minutes. Absolutely awesome. Just in terms of bringing some of this out, some of the great things that you have covered. For a lot of folks, Bitcoin and blockchain are interchangeable, and they think only Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency. I mean, but there's applications of blockchain way beyond Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Maybe you can touch upon what other applications are there in terms of blockchain as the fundamental building block for not just cryptocurrencies but for tokenization, which I think is, and you would agree that it's far greater than anything that's to come to the market. If you want to look at tokenization, you will see that the tokenization market is in the trillions and trillions of dollars. Anything can be tokenized, buildings, real estate. We see that on an ongoing basis. Even a friend in ENY does tokenize high-end wines. And so the application is endless. And that is the way the world is moving right now on the tokenization front. So maybe can we just talk about blockchain and the tokenization side of it?
Yeah, certainly. So Jacob, you're absolutely correct that there is way more to digital assets than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was just sort of the original idea, and Bitcoin is used sort of as decentralized money, and that's a base layer, a very secure and highly adopted protocol. Regarding the underlying blockchain, and up until like 2014, Bitcoin and blockchain was used interchangeably because that was the only blockchain out there. Yeah. But really, if you go back to sort of this concept of distributed ledgers, and I had this up, it's basically anything that you could think about a central bank, for instance, creating a ledger between the central bank and banks and issuing their digital currencies. 4 out of 10 central banks over the past 2 years announced that they will have digital versions of their currency maintained by companies, like ledgers maintained by banks. And what happens here is really some of these distributed ledgers just are a more efficient way to handle data. So central bank digital currency is one sort of application of tokenization. It is tokenization of fiat currencies that exist. Jacob mentioned real estate and wine. Those are some other examples. Real estate is a multi-trillion, so multi-trillion-dollar industry. And then other use cases that I see is actually a lot of people think about tokenizing securities. So, for instance, the municipal bond market is an obscure market. People are looking to bring more liquidity into that market via tokenization. The equity market is fairly efficient as is today, but down the line you could see owning a fraction of a stock or a share in a way that's not registered centrally. That's one other application. Some friends of mine have fractional shares that are tokenized. If you look at Rally Road is one example, they tokenize cars, and that's kind of cool. And then there's rewards programs that people are doing for airlines. That's one way to make you get all these rewards. And backed is one example. In New York Stock Exchange Venture, they use a distributed ledger or blockchain technology, which can be used interchangeably. Usually a distributed ledger is really just a ledger that is hosted by many organizations, and they have an algorithm to agree on what's the truth on that ledger. So it's not like an Excel sheet. It's more like many Excel sheets at different places, and then you sort of exchange information and get to the truth and compare those Excel sheets, if you will. And so I think the reward space is very interesting. So your airline miles are not redeemable today, and they're inflating very fast, probably faster than any fiat currencies, and you can't spend them anyway. But in the future, I can see literally millions of tokens being out there, and you're going to be able to exchange them for dollars, for goods and services. And why is this important? For instance, the U.S. dollars are inflating every year, according to government statistics. I think it's about 2.4% or 2.3% right now. Truth is that the cost of living goes up in the top 50 U.S. cities, roughly between 8 to 12% each year. So, what our rent is and your costs go up. What if your money stayed invested, say, in an index fund, and or something, a diversified portfolio, and you would be able to pay with your S&P 500 stocks in a token form without having to convert to dollars and pay, capital gains taxes or do complex operations. So effectively, tokens will enable these type of things to monetize either existing liquid markets or otherwise non-existing markets and directly be able to spend them. So the transactions will be seamless. I actually think that this is going to be here in 3 years, not 10. And that's kind of again, Jacob. That's the value I see. And you may have other examples that you encountered that are interesting, and I would love to hear them actually.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gabor. I think the 10-year time frame, the way we're moving in terms of technology and what we're seeing, is going to be way more accelerated than people even think. I mean, if you look at, you touched upon this earlier. I think that's a great point on this that it's worth exploring. One is the actual cash that you carry in your wallet, the fiat currency, whether it's the euro, the dollar, the rupee, etc., that the yuan, that all that paper currency called fiat currencies will shortly come to an end, and we'll all move into this crypto world. I know that's a statement that people find hard to believe, that the paper currency in your wallet will be replaced. But when bankers and this minds think about it, Wall Street thinks about it. If I give Gabor $20 from my pocket, no one's making any money out of it. It's simply I take $20, give it to Gabor for something, and that transaction's complete. But if I do a cryptocurrency or a digital currency, if you look at Facebook's Libra, if I do a digital currency, the second I start that transaction to $20 in digital form to Gabor, at every step of the transaction, someone is making money. It might be fractional, but when you're looking at trillions and trillions of dollars, that becomes a huge amount of money. That's one of the reasons why there's a lot of force out there trying to abolish this fiat currency, because there's trillions of dollars in people's pockets, paper currency that's losing value in some cases by the day. If you live in the U.S., it's great. The dollar value keeps going up. If you're euro, it's okay. If you're British pound, it's okay. What happens if you're in Venezuela or in Africa? What you put in your bank today is worth 1/10 10 years from now. So if you really think about this whole paper currency and what's happening to the economies of the world, it has to change. So I'd like to get your thoughts on the fiat currency moving into digital currency, Gabor.
Yeah, absolutely, Jacob. That's a very good point. So the inflation part is in the U.S. We are lucky to have dollars, and many of a big part of the world don't have dollars. And But even now, and I'm going to send this to you guys, but there's something called a Chapwood index that shows this depreciation of assets, and I think that's just concerning that, my breakfast cost in New York doubled in the past 5 years, just as an example. As you guys are in New York, you know how crazy the costs are. Like, it's almost impossible. A high-level Wall Street person barely can make a living in New York. Like, how can you expect making a living in school? So, like, I was in that scenario. So I guess the move from fiat currencies to digital currencies are a fewfold. So one of them is you mentioned, Jacob, that the example of Libra and some fiat currencies are centrally owned, and digital currencies may not be centrally owned. So you are one of the big reasons that individuals support the transition to digital currencies, because in the value chain, for instance, many of you guys have Facebook accounts. You don't get any of the advertising revenues because simply there is not a way to effectively measure value in the space. With tokens, you actually can, and you can get these fractional revenues yourself. So you can, when like in a future world, you may be able to own your data, and Facebook may pay you, and it will actually happen in token forms. In some forms, they are not going to give you a physical dollar. It's just going to be a digital form of money. And why is that? Why is that kind of important? So actually, the crypto space, I have this table, and I hope you guys can see this, but you can. It's actually really hard for money is not really durable, and unfortunately, it's not really scarce either, and it's also centralized at central kind of counterparties, and that's just not good for everyone. There's this there's this economist called I don't know if you guys know the Cantillian Effect, which means and maybe Jacob can talk about it. It's really it means that if central banks create money, and whoever is closer to central banks get more money, so the rich get richer. The more connected, the closer to the central banks people get richer. The individual doesn't really get to retain any of the newly created money. And governments, since really the establishment of the Fed, have some level of have a lot of control about how much currency is printed. One good example is banks borrow at a 0.5% rate. So they borrow money, borrow $1 billion, and then have to pay back, $5 million interest rate. If you look at your credit cards or my credit cards, we have to pay somewhere between 17 to 27% rates. So with cryptocurrencies, these levels of interest and sort of like inaccessibility of money is going to be solved. So I'm excited about that, a future in which we can own our data and get paid for our time spent online through the accounting through using this token-based accounting. And I also think that before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there were a ton of regional banks. I think regional banks are also going to gain more prominence, and people will be able to use different forms of money. And all you're going to be able to, you're just going to have to pay an exchange rate to pay with these regional monies and tokens. But that's going to be great because you'll be able to earn a lot of, your Macy's points, again, will be able to be spent online and so on. So anyways, that's kind of, there are a lot of things to be excited about, and tokens are usually just a mean of getting control back over your data and being able to effectively account for value in a digital world.
Thanks, Gabor. There are a couple of questions from the participants. I can take the first one. One is, can you please talk about the pros and cons of stablecoin? Stablecoins are better. If you look at regular cryptocurrency, like a Bitcoin, it's not backed by anything. It's just its own cryptocurrency that goes. That's one of the cons of a Bitcoin, because there's no underlying value. It's just loose on the market. And one day it's $10,000. One Bitcoin, next day it's $15,000. A stablecoin, however, is stable because it's tied to a basket of currencies or a single currency. For example, if you look at reserve, for example, it's the underlying asset is the U.S. dollars, 1-to-1 U.S. dollar. So it doesn't move. There's a stability to that cryptocurrency. That's why it's called stablecoin. It is tied to a currency like the U.S. dollar or a basket of currencies, U.S. dollar, the euro, the yuan. So it moves only according to that. So that's the pro of a stablecoin. But the con is it's still a cryptocurrency. It's not centralized. So the stable coins are the ones that are getting traction because at the end of the day, it is tied, it is pegged to a currency that is from a central bank. So that is one of the pros and cons of stable coin. So Gabor, there's another question you might want to touch upon, which is for someone who wants to start investing in cryptocurrencies or tokens, how should one get started? Is Bitcoin king, or is there any way for my cryptocurrencies to be stolen? Is it totally safe?
Well, nothing is totally safe. I wanted to remind everyone that this is not the stock market. This is still very early on. Everything might look really gamified and nice and sort of trustworthy, but the truth is a lot of these exchanges are private companies. A lot of them are not actually broker dealers, and you don't have the same protections that you have at banks and brokerages. So my recommendation, if you wanted to experiment, is really, really don't put a lot of money into it. Have literally a few dollars if you invest can give you the same experience that if you would invest a few $1,000s. So learning about the space, going to crypto exchanges is probably the best way to start with that. Coinbase and Gemini and Kraken and Bitstamp are the sort of like these four are the most prominent U.S. Digital asset exchanges that are sort of they're real companies and they're more trustworthy than some of the sort of like different like the Hong Kong or British Virgin Islands domiciled crypto exchanges. So if you want to test that how a transaction works, I would recommend that. If you are more advanced, there are really amazing things you can do. So you can store your Bitcoin yourself. Like there are hardware wallets. Ledger is one example. Trezor, if you want to look that up. That's one way to store it by yourself. You can also, this is absolutely sort of like James Bond movie type of crazy. You can memorize your own public and private keys. So if you have a great memory or an extremely secure safe, you could literally store billions of dollars of Bitcoin in your mind, which is just amazing stuff that you're not able to do with banks. And so those are you can Google it, memorize Bitcoin key or something like that, and then you see a resource. If you want to start with the space, again, a few dollars, and I would go Coinbase or Gemini. Those are the two top most secure, or Bitstamp maybe, sort of exchanges. And Kraken is also a U.S. exchange if you want to look at that list. Again, be very careful in this space. They are not banks. Although I encourage you to experiment with this space because a lot of the innovation is just absolutely crazy. Like compared to banking innovation is so slow and things are not moving ahead. And companies are now just like building things that are smart cities. Your microwave is able to talk to your fridge, and you can measure it. Literally, in a few years, you'll be able to direct your fridge to order from a supermarket, and all of this is actually communicating, and likely it will communicate on a tokenized basis. So getting familiar with this world is actually very helpful, and who the players are, what are the sources where you can get these tokens, who are the issuers, and things like that. So
and only when you get to it do you realize how massive this market is. I mean, if you're just thinking about it, you're not in it. Once you get into it and see the amount of companies, if you look at, for example, Binance out of Malta, it's just a massive, massive organization today. If you look at Gemini and all these company Paxos that are out there, you ask yourself, where was I all this time? When did all this happen? That's how this market is evolving right now. Once you get into it and start reading about it, but this is the future. So and the future is coming very, very very fast. So I think everyone should have a knowledge of it and should be part of it, because otherwise these turns will come upon us very quickly, and we'll wonder where did all this come from. So I think it's, even as a knowledge base, you have to be knowledgeable about this, about the currencies and the cryptocurrencies and the stable coins, because there's a lot of money to be made, and this is where the future is.
Yeah, absolutely, Jacob. And just just to illustrate this, in this list I had Bitfinex, now it's actually top 500 company, and then Swiss exchange listing crypto products. Just one of our investments in Canada had their first regulated listing on the TSX. Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, and E-Trade all trade crypto assets. eToro. With NASDAQ, we have worked to put surveillance on about 60% of all of exchanges, and it's a big revenue center for them. So that is very sort of like important, and and you just want to again, Binance is able to refund $40 million from a hack. Like, your regular company is not able to do that, and so you should absolutely, like Jacob's correct, like be aware of this space, be familiar with the players, and just track things. PayPal just announced that they are going to work with Paxos to offer crypto trading to their clientele, literally billions of people. Microsoft announced mid to late last year that they're launching a test net for decentralized identity platform. So you'll be able to use the underlying Bitcoin blockchain to log into your online portals like Facebook or random flower company that you order flowers from, and without using Gmail or Facebook, a centralized provider. So again, it's real companies, and you should pay attention to. They're investing heavily. Just yesterday, the Office of the Control of the U.S. Currency, so one of the top U.S. banking regulator, provided clarity that banks are now going to be able to hold digital assets directly. Absolutely, like that is like banks are. This is a completely new asset class, and there are thousands of digital assets, and there's going to be way more coming to the market. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm talking with people who are interested in digitizing experiences today, and there's in sports markets and things like that, and so it's all happening. Everything happened literally in the past 5 years. It's incredible. Like,
right.
So obviously, and this is something that Janet Squitieri, who was an alumna of St. John's, and she recommended me talking. The regulation is just trying to catch up with all of these. Like, the IRS, the CFTC, SEC, and the courts are trying to figure out what are digital assets. And that's something that you should also keep in mind. If you trade digital assets, you have to pay tax on it, and it is property by definition from the IRS. The FTC says, "Oh, Bitcoin is actually digital assets. Mostly are commodities." So different definition. The SEC and courts say that it's virtual currency. So again, like, once you start coming into this market, you'll actually learn that there's a lot of complexity to it. And then when you go, this is just the United States. You start going around globally, and there are different, different countries have different reactions to digital assets. Some favorable, others are not, and then they change every year. And but then that's interesting too. Like, China said that it's our national interest to launch a central bank digital currency. They did. Like, China has a central bank digital currency, one of the top economies in the world. The U.S. is soliciting service providers for a similar type of effort called the digital dollar. And again, this is all happening. And while you might actually, that's what I found, that through experience with this space, thinking about the job market or just the general entrepreneurial market, you can 5 to 10x your value. if you know about the space and where things are, know the players, and invest your time. So I definitely agree with Jacob on this point, to learn about the space as much as you can.
One of the questions that the biggest challenge I see with cryptocurrency security, what's being done to secure digital currency? See, this is where the central governments of the world are scrambling right now, as Gabor was just saying, that unless the governments of the world get in on the digital currency and set regulations like we have in terms of the players and the security needed, whether it's the SEC or the CTSC, that's when the cryptocurrency will be safe. I don't know if anybody caught it a few months ago when the $1.2 trillion stimulus came. One of the Democratic bill, it said you will pay them in digital dollar, but then they scrapped it immediately after they came out. I was just amazed at Nancy Pelosi was saying we want to pay our constituents in digital dollar. The first time the U.S. government is even using that word, that they quickly scrambled and got it out of the bill. But you see the thinking, it's coming. It's China being the second largest economy in the world, having digital currency. That is a wake-up call for every other governments of the world to start thinking about it, thinking about the security, to create a proper secure, centralized security for the digital currencies. That will be so the biggest challenge is security. That is correct. What's being done to secure it? The governments of the world are trying to put forth regulations in terms of and what should be in every to have a norm, a set of regulations that will be followed. Gabor, question, please recommend some books, websites to learn on cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so I would recommend the Bitcoin Standard by Seyfried Amoud. He's a great writer, and then those would be that'd be one that I can recommend. The others are wishy-washy. I wouldn't want to waste your time on that because there's just a lot of sort of like grand ideals and they're not corroborated. But I can send you. I have a list of kind of readings. Maybe I'll send it as a follow-up. I also have blogs that I could recommend. If you guys are active on Twitter, definitely join Twitter, and you'll learn so much. I cannot tell you. You will beat the news and media outlets by days, and you will definitely beat the publishers by years. And you can learn a lot. So I have a list of follows as well on Twitter if you guys are interested. And again, I'll send it to you guys as a follow-up. And in stable coins too, and securing stuff. I have actually when Libra came out. And I wrote a piece on stable coins and some of their applications that they, what they can be used for and how they will be used. And actually, it turns out the two categories that I highlighted are exactly what they're being used for. So I'll send around that article too. And again, this is one of those areas where there are very few books right now in the space that are meaningful, so you can learn from people. You can learn from. It sounds stupid, but like Twitter is actually a really good source. I just kind of learn information there. I also see announcements, and I go to primary sources on the Office of the Currency Controller or an SEC document, and so those are useful. But again, I'll send a list. And,
one of the questions is that which digital currency is China using? It's called ERMB. So, one of their currencies is the renminbi. So they're using ERMB, which is electronic RMB. So that's what Chinese central bank has developed, ERMB, which is to be the first digital currency operated by a major economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ERMB and the Digital Currency Project is DCEP. That's the big one that is like alive too in Guangzhou mostly region. It's fascinating, and again, the commitment from central banks, 4 out of 10, and this was the major one, the top 10. I think maybe it might even be 6 at this point. It's just crazy, Like I was at Bitcoin 45 years ago. Bitcoin was in the fringe. You would, if you owned Bitcoin or if you talked about it, people would say that you're crazy. And actually, some of these conversations, we're still very early on. Like there is no Bitcoin ETF, for instance, which is, and it's like it's not even legal in many countries, just getting there. So you guys are literally, if you know about the space, you are part of the 1 to 3%, definitely 1% with respect to knowledge about the space. So, but again, I think this is going to be just as an explosive of an expansion as we see, just from Jacob's point, the government bringing up, digital dollars. Actually, in real life, it took the government 2.5 weeks to distribute after decision the actual paychecks because things needed to be printed. The president needed to sign it, and how do we distribute it? Like the IRS needs to dig up records who should get this, and then they were talking to Cash App. I don't know if you guys know Square, and it was a payments company that Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter, leads to. And so if we had digital currency at that moment, you could pretty much press a button and distribute, all of the stimulus checks real time to everyone who qualifies. I mean, we're talking a matter of hours versus a matter of weeks. And with ton of inefficiency right now, and so anyways, you guys should learn about this because you'll probably get a very high paid job as you're looking for your next chapter if you're knowledgeable about this space.
Gabor, thank you so much. I think that's the last of our questions. Stacy, anything else?
No, I think we reached all the questions. So I don't see any more coming in. So with that said, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I wanted to say a special thank you to Jacob and Gabor for sharing their knowledge. As a reminder, all webinar attendees will be receiving a recording of this presentation shortly. For Jacob and Gabor's full bios, please go to stjohns.edu/CF-webinars. Here you will also find a schedule of upcoming webinars and past recordings. We hope that you will join us next Thursday at 9 a.m., where we will learn of the role of technology in financial services. In the meantime, have a great day.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks, everyone. Thank
you.
Thank you, Jacob. Thanks, Stacy.